The divisional round of the playoffs are in the books. We go on to the conference championship games. Nick and I are going to recap what happened this past weekend and get a quick preview on Commanders and Eagles and Bills Chiefs. All coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Nick Whalen. We are brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6 and LIV Golf Fantasy. Nick, jumping right into this, how was your wild card or your divisional round weekend? Enjoy the games. How are your teams doing?
Well, as you can tell, I'm somehow still sick, Jeff. This is if you've listened to our pod last week, if you listened to a radio show on SiriusXM, this has been an ongoing saga. But it gave me a good excuse to just kind of lay low and do nothing but watch football this weekend. So, my postseason fantasy teams, they're doing all right. We're hanging around in the NFFC Hold'em contest. It's a little bit difficult to project exactly where you stand. You got to be kind of checking in on everybody's teams and see who has the multipliers going into conference championship weekend. But we did bring home a pretty nice parlay on the betting side of things, Jeff.
Nice.
Cash the 47-1. Stemming back from wild card weekend. All we needed was the Travis Kelce anytime touchdown. And thankfully we got it after a couple of stall outs early in the game for Kansas City.
Well done. Congratulations. That's nice. That's definitely a nice way to, start off the whole weekend too. Get it in the first game as well.
Yeah.
What were the other legs?
Books are just shaking right now.
Yeah. Quivering even. What were the other legs of that?
So again, I put this in, I think it was last Monday. So we're talking January 13th. So it began with the Rams-Vikings game. So we had a TJ Hawkinson anytime touchdown. We had Jalen Naylor over 2.5 receptions, Puka Nacua over 2.5 rushing yards. All those hit on Monday. We also tied in an NBA prop, James Harden over 6.5 assists. Again, that was a week ago against the Miami Heat. And all we needed was Kelce to bring it home. So that was a nice start to the weekend. Although, maybe we just want to dive into Texans Chiefs if we want to go chronologically here.
Yeah.
Just such a classic Chiefs victory, right? I think you and I talked a lot about this game, probably too much on the radio last week. And, I was able to thread the needle. I like Kansas City to cover. I like the under 41.5. This had all the hallmarks of a Chiefs victory. Neither team really looking all that good. Of course, there's controversial calls. We got, guys on the Houston side saying they're playing against the refs in addition to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Here we are. Kansas City puts up 212 yards of total offense. They get outgained by like 125 and they still win this game by 2 scores.
Yeah. And if depending on when you put if you were betting a side on this game, it depends on when you put your bet in there, because that late intentional safety probably hosed a bunch of people. But then again, you were probably living well because you already had the blocked field goal earlier there too. So it's just wild to see that. A couple of things that stood out to me. We'll start on when Houston had the ball first. One, they ran the ball a lot better than I expected. I was on the under with Joe Mixon rushing yards at 54.5. No running backs hadn't really hit the Chiefs that hard all year long. Mixon was coming in on a sore ankle, hadn't been very productive as of late. So of course he almost got there at halftime, and he got there on the first run of the third quarter. I'm like, okay, going to need some major negative plays for this to get a reverse. Nope. Which is a shame because I got other parts right there that would have, so I missed out on my underdog plays. Because that was one of them there. Mahomes going over 4.5 rushing attempts. Those kneel downs late were huge as far as that goes. But the other thing that kind of caught my eye is that all season long, Houston's had a hard time protecting the passer. They did so. They had a big problem with that, especially in the second half this week. Stroud looked more mobile, and this team is a better team when he can run the ball, when he can kind of scramble a little bit more. Like, where was this all season long? I'd like to see more of that from them. I think that's something to build off of. I think they got to spend their whole offseason addressing the offensive line, though.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he took 8 sacks. Certainly could have taken more. Like you said, was able to scramble a few times, pick up some key first downs. I mean, Houston went 10 of 17 on third downs in this game, which is pretty good, especially for this offense. They outgained Kansas City. They out yard per played Kansas City. They outpossessed Kansas City. They didn't turn the ball over. To give you a window, Jeff, into how improbable this win was for Kansas City. Like I mentioned, they had 212 total yards, the fewest by any team in a playoff win since the Denver Broncos put up 194 total yards of offense in Super Bowl 50. Of course, that was a defensive dominated game. Von Miller won Super Bowl MVP. This was also far and away the fewest yards that we've ever seen a team put up in a playoff win for a team that did not force a turnover. You can kind of see how, some of these teams could win games where it's like, hey, you don't have a great offensive game, but you got a pick six or, punt return or something like that. Teams that put up less than 285 yards of total offense and do not force a turnover, those teams were 1-64 straight up in playoff games in the Super Bowl era.
Yeah. This wasn't like Lions Titans, where it's just that the Lions were scoring from short and all that. They did, although the Chiefs did have that kickoff return to start the game, the fumble that they recovered, and then the penalty on top of that. And penalties obviously were a big part of this game too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a remarkable game. I didn't feel like the Chiefs were terrible offensively watching it, but they really kind of were. They couldn't run the ball at all. Pacheco was a complete non-factor. Right. Hunt had a couple of runs that were decent, but and only one wideout touched the ball. Xavier Worthy is the only KC wideout that caught a pass, had a carry, had a touch. D-Hop did nothing. Hollywood Brown did nothing. Justin Watson did nothing, shockingly enough. But they tried to add on to these weapons from Mahomes and just total non-factors.
Yeah, it's baffling, but at the same time, kind of expected from Kansas City at this point. It's like this is how they win games. They don't feel like they play better than their opponent half the time, but they bleed them out. I was talking with our guy John McKechnie last night about this game, and he quoted the great Chris Liss, who he said once mentioned that Kansas City and Mahomes, they're the best team in the NFL at picking up 10 yards over the course of 4 plays, right? Yes. And it's like, do you trust anybody more than Patrick Mahomes to pick up a key first down? Not necessarily rip off an explosive play or go lead a touchdown drive, but when you absolutely need to burn clock, when you absolutely need to possess the football, nobody does it better than Mahomes. I mean, I thought this was a pretty bad offensive game for Kansas City overall. I mean, field position was a huge advantage for them. You mentioned the kickoff return, getting the, after the stuff on 4th down where, Houston went for a 4th and 10 at the KC 40-yard line, only down 1 score. You're down 8 at that point. There's over 10 minutes left on the clock. And not only did they not get it, but CJ Stroud is sacked for a massive loss. So, Kansas City takes over in Houston territory. But what do? They go 3 and out immediately. They didn't even gain any yardage on that possession. So it's so tough when you spin this ahead now to looking at championship weekend. Nothing that the Chiefs have shown us, certainly this past week and really for most of the season, nothing should imply that they're the better team. They haven't looked like the better team, and yet they're 1.5 point home favorites. And I'm not going to be the one that's signing up to bet against Patrick Mahomes in this situation. I've lost too much money in these.
I know. I did set it at 1.5, and it did, in my mind. I'm not a book, shockingly enough, but doing my own guess lines, I did set it at 1.5. I thought that the other game would be 3.5. I think it's 4.5. So
it's up to 5.5 now at DraftKings.
Already gotten bet up. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. But looking forward to talking about that. That 4th down play was ridiculous. I mean, first of all, Troy Aikman had a great game, I thought, as an analyst in the booth.
Yeah.
He was all over the sketchy calls. He was all over the Texans. Like, why are you rushing to the line on a critical play? You should call a timeout here. They weren't even set. And they ended up having, Dalton Schultz pretend block against Karlaftis on that play.
Right.
He did the old label shit. And, sure enough, the bull got there and sacked him. A huge loss too. I mean, I want to blame Stroud for not throwing it at all, but a pick 6 would be worse in that situation. Yeah. And he literally had no time. I mean, it was just straight right on him from the get-go. That sequence of plays. He got buried on the play, like on the very first play of that, the 1st and 10 play. There's a blitz up the middle where the guy went untouched. I think it was Reed, if I recall correctly. There was the play to, I guess it was Wayne. Is that it? Justin Wayne is the wide receiver. Jared Wayne, excuse me.
Jared Wayne, yeah.
Where it was a tough play to make. A more skilled receiver adjusts to the ball in the air a little bit better, I think.
Yeah.
But they were his first snaps. I mean, he was making plays in practice. That's great. But, when you're down to that, they cut Deontay Johnson. Robert Woods wasn't out there.
Yep.
They had to throw to somebody. Wayne had an opening, but, couldn't come down with the play. But that was also a under duress throw. He just kind of threw it up there, hoping the receiver would make an adjustment. It was a wild sequence there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the game played out about as expected on the Texans side of things, right? I mean, their team total was 16.5. They ended up going under that. You knew it was going to be somewhat of a slog. And, I think that first drive of the game where, Joe Mixon was running really well, that they're hitting some big pass plays, and you start to wonder, okay, maybe they did build some momentum last week. But, once they stalled out, they had a 1st and 10 at the 14-yard line and basically ended up picking up no yards on the next 3 plays, had to settle for a field goal. I know it was basically like the first 7 minutes of the game, but you just felt like, man, those are the opportunities that you have to cash in these situations. Like you cannot be settling for field goals on the road at Arrowhead. And, to go back to that 4th down play, like in general, I tend to applaud aggression, but it's 4th and 10, man. It's 4th and 10. If it's 4th and 3, even 4th and 5, 4th and 6, maybe you can draw something up
in a 1-score game.
4th and 10 in a 1-score game when your offensive line has just been getting bludgeoned the entire day. Once that play happened, you kind of knew where this game was headed. But again, with that said, the Chiefs go 3 and out after. The Texans get the ball back with 8.5 minutes left. It was somewhat of a no harm, no foul situation, although they're getting the ball deep in their own territory. They go 3 and out. They give up the field goal on the next drive. They have a field goal blocked. I mean, what I'm trying to say is there were other opportunities here for Houston to get back into this game. And, we can criticize the KC offense all we want. I think you have to be a little concerned, knowing that you're going to have to keep up with the Buffalo Bills this coming week. But Kansas City's defense stepped up here. I know you're not going up against necessarily an elite opponent in Houston, but I mean, this was a game that was completely won on the defensive end. What I will say when it comes down to Bills Chiefs, the Bills are not going to be able to count on multiple turnovers. I think it's pretty easy to say if Baltimore turns it over maybe even once last night, they probably win that game. You can't survive 3 turnovers on the road against a team like Buffalo. Kansas City has not committed a turnover since week 11.
But the Ravens weren't a turnover team in the regular season either, though, is the weird thing.
It was only their second multi-turnover game of the year. Yeah. The other one was the crazy Steelers game that they lost.
Yeah. And that's right. That's right. I forgot about that one there. That was a hideous one there. Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think that the Chiefs, I mean, they had 2 weeks to try to figure this out. And honestly, I was the guy saying I thought they had figured things out. Week 17 against the Steelers, that offense looked like old Chiefs, and we didn't see that yesterday at all. Credit some goes to the Texans because they were getting to Mahomes. The Chiefs moved Thuney out to left tackle to try to counteract Willer Anderson, and it didn't work. That was kind of a theme of this weekend here. Like Jared Verse had his way with the Eagles offensive line, which is pretty darn impressive. Yeah. But it was kind of, you're like, yeah, thought you had fixed this, but no, you clearly hadn't. The one thing they did do is they unlocked Kelsey. This is playoff Kelsey.
Yep.
There were a lot of conspiracy theorists out there like, oh yeah, they're just kind of saving him for the playoffs. Maybe it's true. Maybe they were.
I mean, he was basically the entire passing game, right? I mean, it was Kelsey and a couple plays to Xavier Worthy, and that was it. I mean, Mahomes only completed 16 passes for 177 yards. I mean, this nothing looks solved here outside of, I guess, unlocking Travis Kelsey. And, I think the concern on the Kansas City side is like, you haven't been tested in a while, against an elite opponent. I guess you could say the Chargers in week 14, that was a close game that they won. But, coming down the stretch, like you look at that Pittsburgh game and the offense looked a lot better, but what does it really mean to do that against Pittsburgh, knowing what we know now about the Steelers? And, you played Houston twice in the last month, but that's a diminished version of the Texans. They lost Tank Dell in the previous matchup. Other than that, you played the Browns, you played the Raiders, you played Carolina. I think there's a pretty strong case to be made that they haven't really played anybody close to the level of the Bills since they played the Bills back in week 11.
Yeah, that's right. And it kind of showed. I think they got to find a way to get Hopkins and Hollywood Brown a little active there. They tried to go after. There is a play where Brown early on. I think the very first drive, actually, third down play, Brown, Mahomes overthrew Brown. He was open in the end zone a little bit there, but he only had 2 targets all game. Pacheco still doesn't look the same. I thought maybe the extra time off might have helped him. It hasn't. In fairness, he's coming back from a pretty major injury, and just doesn't have that same gear yet. So yeah, that's why we saw a little bit more hump. But they only ran 13 times other than Mahomes, really. One with Worthy, one with which was a disaster play, minus 8 yards. Ariza with the purposeful safety, so that doesn't even count as a rush. But yeah, they couldn't run the ball at all against the Texans. They got to do something better against the Bills. That you can run against the Bills a little bit, so that'll be kind of key going forward.
In theory, you can. We'll see if the Chiefs could do it, but we can move on here. Not much else to say from this kind of a slot fest.
All right, let's move. We'll move over to the other AFC game, but first, quick note from DraftKings Pick 6.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Welcome back to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. The Buffalo Bills, like the Chiefs, were significantly outgained yet won. 416 to 273 in this one, Nick. Early, the Ravens went down right away. Late, they went down right away. It felt way too easy at certain times for them.
Yeah.
But they kept on, they kept on messing up. They kept on shooting themselves in the foot constantly there, including the game deciding drop by Andrews on the 2-point conversion.
Yeah, you mentioned being outgained. All 4 winners this weekend were outgained by their opponent, which is interesting. I cannot imagine that has ever happened before in NFL divisional history. But I mean, we mentioned it, in conjunction with the with the Bills Chiefs talk in the last segment. You can't turn it over 3 times in a game like this. And, it almost felt like some of the other plays that they had, they're not going to count as turnovers, but some of the drops, obviously the drop by Andrews, the one silver lining, and I mentioned this on VSiN last night to the Andrews situation, is that it does take some of the heat off Lamar, I guess, because, it's fair to criticize Lamar for the interception. I still don't know exactly what happened there. They were talking about it on the broadcast, and he didn't have time to see the safety.
Yeah.
Either way,
and Bateman broke off the route, which is a
Right.
continuing theme for Lamar and his interceptions. Because that same thing happened that Steelers game, remember? Different route, obviously, but
yeah, I still don't know if that ball was being caught. I don't know if it was more of a throwaway, but regardless, you just can't have that happen. The fumble is just brutal. Back Lamar recovers it, and then really he's going to finish. Good job to still chase. Good job by Von Miller to hold on to that ball for sure. This could be a classic, running back and out a good swipe on him. But this just ended up being a disappointing game. You look at the first score, 2-point, right? Come to a 2-point, like it feels like it should have been an all-time classic. It just didn't really feel that way. Like this was heroic MVP showdown, Lamar versus Allen. Like that was fine. It didn't play all that well. I mean, 16, 22, 7. And if you rush out for 150 total rushing, I would have voted that they probably lost this game by 2 or 3 scores. So for it to kind of be the situation where the Bills didn't have to win the game, that the Ravens just kind of lost it themselves. Still a fun game to watch, but it was just kind of disappointing from a viewership perspective. Yeah,
it was. We were having my daughter's 18th birthday party, family party going on at the same time as this game. Okay. So didn't get to hear all the commentary. It was an interesting way to watch the game. But it was kind of, the volume was kind of on, but couldn't have it so loud so as to be rude and all that. But so I'm going to probably do a rewatch of it just to kind of pick up on some things here and there. But it did feel like that. I think Lamar at least gets a little bit of, a reprieve because he let him on that drive at the end. The throw was right there on the 2-point conversion at the end. Yeah. Yes, he had the 2 turnovers. The Andrews one over the middle there after the catch was a killer for them too. I mean, the Lamar fumble when they're driving and the Bills turn around and score is probably the worst. But they had that there, and they still it was in their grasp. It's 21-10 at the half. The Bills get the ball to start the second half, and no, it's not a problem. The Ravens, get right back into it there. They negate a lot of that advantage there. So, it was, they obviously they didn't hit on the earlier 2-point conversion either there. So that was also an issue too. A lot of coulda, shoulda, wouldas in this game. I don't think I'm convinced that the Bills are necessarily better than the Ravens.
Me neither.
And I also don't think, some of these things though, they get these sort of things happen in Buffalo. It's like there's a reason why the Bills, earn that advantage. Their Bills aren't on the top of their game right now offensively.
No,
the passing side of things really wasn't clicking at all. Amari Cooper is just a ghost, a rumor. I don't know why they traded for him except for maybe to be this like decoy. I mean, I don't know. You barely saw him at all. He barely heard his name called.
No, I think he had one target, toward the end of the game that looked like somewhat of a miscommunication down the sideline. That was really it. That was his moment in this game. But yeah, I mean, kind of going back to what I said earlier. I mean, the fact that Buffalo only needed to score 6 points in the second half to win this game, like it just, I'm not convinced they're the better team at all. I think if you play out this game 10 times, Baltimore probably wins 6 of them. I mean, this was the bottom tier outcome. Ravens with the turnovers and just a brutal way for this team for Mark Andrews. I mean, unfortunately, this is barring a Super Bowl run in the next couple of years here. Like this might be his legacy. Unfortunately, just the all-time, pretty clear who to blame in the situation type of games for him. I will say, Jeff, one thing that stuck out to me, something that I think really mattered in the right before the half. Buffalo is up 14-10. Baltimore had just set for a field goal, which was, they had the ball basically on the 1-yard line and, ended up taking a sack and have to set for the field goal. Then the PI call on Coleman.
Yeah.
Offensive pass interference, but not.
I think we lost Nick there for a second there. What? Yeah, that was the play, the sequence right before the half, and I know what he's referring to there. And we'll kind of go back to Nick here in a sec when he gets a little bit of a click there, but clicks back in. But I know that sequence that he's referring to there. That it was a pretty big call there. Pretty big sequence there where or lack of call, if you will. That allowed Buffalo to go ahead and get that touchdown right before the half. Huge to get up to 2 scores there in that point in time.
Yeah, do you have me back now, Jeff?
Do I have you back now? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, dude, my internet situation here has been a disaster lately. But no, I thought that was very clearly offensive pass interference by Coleman. At the very least, it should have been a no call. I thought when the flag came out, it was for sure going to be on the offense. That was the biggest call of the game. I thought. I mean that handed Buffalo a touchdown before the half to make this an 11-point game, and that was on a 3rd and 5 too, right? I mean that would have forced them to kick a relatively long field goal in adverse conditions.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right there. And well, yeah, and who knows because they're at the 30, it would have sent it back to the 45. Then you have to try to get that yardage back. Yeah, huge play, massive play in that game there. And I agree with you. I think that was offensive pass interference there. So really big setup there. So Bills are 1.5-point underdogs at KC. I mean, earlier this year when the 2 teams played, the Bills were clearly the better team. Granted, it was in Buffalo. This is going to be in KC, and I feel like the Chiefs are a better team now than they were then, but they didn't necessarily show it this past weekend. So I'm having a hard time deciding which side of this line I'm going to be on.
I'm just defaulting to the Chiefs. I don't even have a great reason for it. I'm not going to try to come up with, some reason why they're the better team because they haven't looked like the better team. Buffalo's been the better team all year, but I can't keep getting beat on Mahomes in the playoffs. Like I think I think we just get another classic Chiefs game where maybe they win it on a walk-off field goal. There's probably a controversial call or two. Mahomes is going to have his 24-yard scramble on 3rd and long to set up, the game winner.
Yeah.
We've just seen this play out too many times for me to pick against KC at home.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you on that. I get it. I mean, he's lost one AFC championship game in the last, 5 years? So that's pretty crazy. Yeah. He's lost to Brady and Burrow. That's it.
Yeah,
in terms of getting
remarkable run.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. And he's always, as a starter, he's always made it to the AFC championship game. That is that's sick. That's just sick. You look at, and it's so daunting. I mean, you've got so many good quarterbacks in the AFC, and yet you've got this at the top of the mountain. It's really like Mike Tyson punch out there. You get to the final level there, and it's impossible to get past that last level. So yeah, I feel like that it's got to be so tough. I mean, if you're a Baltimore fan right now, like, crap, what do we do? How do we, I guess not lose to the Raiders in week 2, so you have home field advantage. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with it. There, that's how they have to get a little bit better off in terms of what they can do better in the future, because I can't see too many other ways.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. You're grasping at straw, like you're Baltimore or at this point, and especially this first swing, people used to put up 5 a game, and it's like, yeah, they feel like the best team. It's more frustrating when they don't feel like the best team.
Yeah. So I'm really looking for that game. I am not officially making a pick yet on this game. I'm going to give myself the time a couple of days on that. We're going to talk about the NFC in a second, but first, got a quick note from our friends at LIV Golf Fantasy. A new season of LIV Golf Fantasy is coming in 2025. New prizes, new ways to win, and more are coming in the new season. Get ready to play and sign up now at fantasy.livegolf.com. Also, we are on the Blue Wire Network. Here are their ads. All right, let's hit the NFC. Let's start off the Saturday night game. Commanders and the Lions. Again, it's been a crazy weekend. My daughter's birthday was actually on Saturday. We had her friend's party where we took her out and a bunch of her friends out to dinner on Saturday night, and then the family party yesterday at the house. So like, I'm watching the game on my phone at the restaurant, and the waiter keeps on coming by. He goes, "Oh, I've got money on this game. I'm going to come by your table a lot." It was pretty funny there, but I feel so bad for Lions fans, really. I know you might not. Joe Bartle definitely does not. But they were queuing up the sad Lions fans' faces on the broadcast with about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They're doing that pretty early. And I do feel bad for them, because, I mean, they've been through a lot. And, my mom's from Detroit too. So that's the other reason I was happy for their success. But this is this was the best chance they had. And then they had everything fall apart on them.
Yeah, I think they're only the second 15-win team to not win a playoff game, joining that 15-1 Packers team from, I think it was 2011. But, much like, I think if you look at how the Baltimore game played out last night, I mean, the Lions beat themselves in a lot of ways, right? 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions, a sack fumble. I think you don't want to take anything away from Washington, certainly, but I don't come away from this game saying, well, the Commanders are better than the Lions. I still think the Lions probably win that game 8 or 9 times out of 10, and you just can't turn the ball over at that volume against anybody in the postseason. And I think one thing you got to say about Washington, though, is they answered every single time Detroit made it back to a 1-score game. The Lions are playing from behind the entire game. Commanders only punted once. They were 3 of 4 on 4th downs. They were able to start chewing clock in the second half. Detroit would get a stop and then put up a touchdown to make it a 3-point game. Washington able to answer back. They had that drive. I think it was early in the fourth quarter. They answered, again, it was 31-28 at that point, a 15-play, 8.5-minute touchdown drive. Like, those are the kind of drives I did not think we would see for a second straight week from Washington.
Yeah. It was, this game totally reminded me of Commanders Bengals on that Monday night game, where anytime the Bengals tried to threaten, the Commanders answered right back. They outlioned the Lions too, because they went for it on 4th down so many times.
Yep.
And that's the thing is, it's so frustrating as a fan to watch when your team can't get off the field defensively. And 4th and 3, you absolutely know they're going for it against you, and they're going to get it every single time. And that's exactly what happened in that Monday night game. That's what happened on Saturday night, except for the very first 4th down play. But that set the tone for the game, saying, okay, Dan Campbell, you're going for every 4th down. So am I. And the Commanders put up 481 yards. This is not like getting outgained like the other 3 winners this weekend here. This was clearly like, okay, well, we're going to get whatever we want. And the fact is they only got outgained because they scored a defensive touchdown. It's basically, that's why they didn't have the field to go to on that. They had that extra score. And oh my God, the Lions, 5 turnovers. And the worst of them was the last one, or not really. It wasn't the last one, but the deciding one, basically. The Jameson Williams interception, the trick play gone bad. When a receiver gets a chance to throw it, by God, I am going to throw it, even if it's not remotely open. I mean, they live by the sword, die by the sword. I get all that. This is what they do. They call these plays and they work most of the time. But man, that backfired so spectacularly, and the stakes were so high. To be able to, for that was, you just couldn't give up that one play. And then they were down 3 scores the rest of the game, and they couldn't catch up. Until then, they had hope. Maybe they could force a field goal. Maybe they could get a stop somewhere. At that point in time, like, okay, we're not getting 2 stops. We're not getting 2 onside kicks. They almost got that one onside kick, but that ended the game basically.
Well, and like you said, the Lions were moving the ball pretty effectively. It's like, really when they weren't scoring, they were turning it over. It's not like they were punting all over the place. And, they put up over 500 yards of offense. I thought that play call was just unnecessary at that time. Agreed. I mean, that's something you pull out in desperation mode if there's like 3 minutes left and you got to get a quick score. I mean, there were over 10 minutes remaining in the 4th quarter at that point. You're only down 10. I mean, you're the Lions. You could score in an instant. And it just, obviously, a lot of this is on Jameson Williams. These guys are always coached. If it's not there, throw it away. But we see this like almost every week, I feel like, in the NFL, where like it's a lot easier said than done to just toss that ball out of bounds when you're not used to being in that situation. And I just thought the Lions should have played that straight. Like there was just no real need to bring out a trick play in that moment. Even if you have to settle for a field goal on that drive, it's not the end of the world. You're down 7. There's still plenty of time. You get a stop, you get a score. It's a tie game. So like you said, I think the Lions got a little too cute. They really weren't ready for this game. It wasn't just the turnovers, but some really bad penalties. That 12 men on the field late in the game
on 4th down. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, I felt bad for Tom Brady. He saw it right away and he's just like, no, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can see like, the players are scrambling. There's one guy looking like he knows he shouldn't be out there, but he's kind of running back and forth. Like I know it was loud in that building, but you can't fall asleep at the wheel there if you're the Lions coaching staff. Like one, you can't have 12 guys on the field, and 2, you gotta be on top of that. You gotta have a timeout called. I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah. How did they not call timeout? That's the thing. I mean, maybe because maybe they were in formation, it's automatic or something, but I know, but you see Aaron Glenn trying to wave him over. You see him going crazy on the side. Why not just call timeout? I guess. I guess
the refs tend to be very graceful in those situations. They're always handing out timeouts, right? Whether it's like an end of play clock thing. It's like, I don't know. I really don't know what happened. And, who knows if that ultimately changed the outcome, but that gave the Commanders a free touchdown. That was a 4th down.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And at first I'm like, oh, there's a flag. Again, watching it in the restaurant on my phone. I'm like, oh, that was kind of the thing. I got to say, I don't really love Tom Brady as a broadcaster. So having it without the sound was actually okay.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it. Again, I'm going to have to go through and rewatch it there and catch that there. But of the 4 crews this weekend, it's kind of my least favorite of the 4. So I didn't mind not having volume for that game.
I don't really get into announcer stuff. I don't really care. They're all the same to me. I'm going to watch no matter what.
That's fair. And I know a lot of people are like that. I get into it a little bit. Yeah. There's certain ones I really like. I really like Buck and Aikman. I really like Greg Olson. And especially when he's with Joe Davis, I think they're a pretty good combo. But at the same time, I didn't get to hear Brady call that, so it's a little bit interesting. By the way, I think it's interesting that Brady is like taking on an active role with this Raiders, ownership, trying to be involved in the coach search. It seems like, how can you keep the broadcasting job? I don't know. It just seems weird to me.
It's definitely a conflict of interest for sure.
Mhm.
I do wonder if that's something that will need to be addressed this offseason. But from the Raiders' perspective, like if it's allowed, why would you not want Tom Brady consulting, right? A team that's
Oh yeah,
gotten
for sure.
nothing right in the draft, especially with quarterbacks for the
Yeah.
last 30 years. Like if Tom Brady's giving the input, I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, exactly. And for that matter, not much right in the front office or in coaching either, for that matter, too. I mean,
No.
they could use whatever they can get there for sure.
Yeah.
But I'll say this: if he's ever covering a Chiefs game or Chargers game or Broncos game, like, gonna give him nothing. There's
Shouldn't. Yeah.
all the pre stuff that you usually do. There's no way I'm gonna give him anything. Anyways,
Mhm.
back to this game. The Commanders now, they've seen the Eagles twice. They beat them once. In weird game where Hurts got hurt, had the concussion, and they were horrible early. They turned the ball over countless times early, had a 4th down stop, and they found a way to win. It'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend in Philly.
Yeah, and we can talk, Rams Eagles as well, but I think Washington has to be viewed as a live dog here, right? I
I
mean,
agree.
this is an all-time playing with house money situation. I mean,
Yeah, that's dangerous.
all of the
Very.
pressure is on Philly to win this game, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you're playing a division opponent with a rookie quarterback for the 3rd time this season. Yeah, they beat you in the last meeting, but Jalen Hurts went out on the first series of the game. He had to play Kenny Pickett for virtually the entire game. So Philly's a rightful favorite. Obviously, they're the better team. They're the more talented team. They have advantages all over. But I would have said the same thing this past week, right? I love Detroit minus 8.5. I made that my best bet. Like I really thought this would be the end of the road. We'd be having the, what a great season by the Commanders conversation in the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
And they basically led the entire game. And I still think, Philly's offense is, I wouldn't say mistake prone enough, but maybe it's the other way around, but it's not aggressive enough where I think you have to go into this game expecting the Commanders to find a way to put up at least 24, 27, maybe more points. And you're going to have to score with them. Right. So if you're Philly, I don't think you can look at this as another game where you can just kind of choke out an opponent because for whatever reason, I mean, Washington just, whether it's the aggressiveness on 4th downs, whether it's the poise of Jaden Daniels, their ability to hit big plays, it feels like at will. Again, the Eagles defense should have the advantage here, but there's something about this Washington team. But I would not be surprised if we would win this game.
Yeah. It's not like Washington's going to get out coached in this game. I think that's, although I kind of thought the same thing about, Eagles Rams in that respect is like, it kind of showed that, McVay is on a pretty high level there. And I think Quinn's pretty high level too there. And I'm impressed with that. I mean, Washington gave up over 500 yards. So let's be clear though, that,
Exactly.
not everything is perfect here with the Commanders. But I mean, they got those turnovers. They got some key plays there. They got the Goff a couple of times. Meanwhile, Daniels not sacked once in that game too. That's the other thing, at least the Lions, for all their issues, and at least they were able to generate a pass rush against the Vikings. They couldn't scheme anything up against Daniels. When Daniels is clean like that, I mean, it's dangerous. And I think the Eagles are going to provide more of a pass rush. Let's talk about pass rushes, the Eagles and the Rams and all that. Because that was kind of one of the big stories in this game was the pass rush on both sides.
Yeah, 7 more sacks for the Rams after putting up 9 sacks from Sam Darnold in the wild card round. So that is an NFL record for the most sacks in a 2-game playoff span with 16. I was really impressed with the Rams' ability to make this a game at the end, right? Like when Saquon broke off that long run, he's banging on his head like that. That was like an all-time playoff moment. That was super cool. I mean, just trying to imagine being in the building as an Eagles fan, watching that must have been just incredible. And it felt like the dagger, right? Because at that point, the snow's coming down, the field is an ice rink. Matthew Stafford looked like he wanted no part of that whatsoever.
Right.
As soon as it got snowy, Stafford just shut it down. At one point, the Rams went 3 and out, field goal, 3 and out, fumble, 3 and out, leading up to those final 2 drives where they were finally able to move the ball. But I thought the biggest play in this game was the sack of Matthew Stafford on that final drive. Rams have all the momentum.
Yes.
They're hitting big play after big play. All of a sudden, you're in the red zone. And I don't think it was on Stafford. You saw the replay. The center just turned the wrong way. I think it was Jalen Carter. He let him just walk right by him and, obviously get to Matthew Stafford. He's not going to shake out of that sack. And that just took all the momentum away from the Rams. All of a sudden you're in this long yardage situation. You feel like you got to pick up a big play in a condensed space. And obviously the Eagles were able to pull it out. But man, if that sack doesn't happen, Philly was very, very close to blowing this. And that would have That would have just been a stunning reversal from how this game looked after the Saquon touchdown.
I mean, I kind of felt when Elliott missed the extra point that might matter, but I was thinking it was going to cost us a cover. I'm like,
yeah, right.
Not the game. You're talking cover. I'm talking about the game.
Well, and he missed one earlier in the game too. I think it was on their first touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, yet he made those 3 clutch field goals. Spending all that time clearing space and all that. It was, I don't know. It was, but it just felt like, and it was just kind of brushed off. Oh, he missed the extra point. Oh well, big deal. They're up to it's 28-15. They're fine, on that. But it always comes back to haunt. It seems like there. At least that was a push for us in stat picks. That didn't cost us there on the line, because that's the important thing, of course, not the game itself. But the passing offense looks terrible for the Eagles, and obviously Hurts got banged up in this game, and that's going to be a big storyline going throughout the week. Another reason why I think the Commanders are alive on this one here too, by the way, because the Eagles offense became very one-dimensional. I mean, it was already kind of one-dimensional anyhow,
right? But
you just knew like they're going to be uber conservative. Oh, 3rd and 19. Yep. Oh, we're going to just run it up the middle there. No problem. And they knew it. Sack, the sack on, the Eagles' last drive, they get the ball after the Rams score the touchdown. They run the ball once, they do the naked bootleg, and the Rams don't fall for it all. What a play. Just Hurts got smothered on that play. Couldn't even throw it away. Didn't have a chance. Huge play. I mean, because you just knew, okay, the drive's over. The Eagles are going to have to run it. They're going to run it up the middle. We're going to stop them. We're going to get the ball back. It just set the tone for like everything there. You could feel everybody like grab our butts. This is a scary time here.
Yeah. And, they were able to escape, obviously. But, if you commit those kind of mistakes against Washington, which I know sounds kind of crazy to say, like, I feel like the Commanders are going to capitalize. It's like you just you can't take that many negative plays. Again, very lucky to escape were the Eagles. And you bring up a good point on Hurts. That looked brutal. Like I thought he was out for the game and maybe for the season, right? And all of a sudden he's back and looked fine after. But I would not be surprised at all if he's on the injury report over the next couple of days. He's limited. He's not at 100%. And I think that's absolutely going to matter. I really think that knee, it's tough for me to believe that he would come out completely unscathed from a play like that. Now, the weather is going to be a lot better this weekend. Especially don't be dealing with the snow and the rain. And we're looking like maybe on Sunday. So I don't know if there's really the other just that probably should see just over. Are the conditions really help Philly here more than anything, because they for like a full quarter and a half, it felt like the Rams had just given up offensively.
Yeah, they had, but then it ended up hurting the Eagles at the end too. It's kind of funny. They couldn't do what they wanted to. But the thing is, the other huge play was the Kyren Williams fumble. I mean, that he had already gained, like he had already been like gotten the first down. They were over the 40, and all of a sudden, you're feeling okay. The Rams have a little bit of momentum here. Maybe this could happen. And it slips out. But then again, I mean, the Eagles had to settle for a field goal when they thought they had scored a touchdown twice. I mean,
that was huge.
That there were a lot of different swings in this game here. Yeah, I'm going to be on the Commanders if it stays this high. If it's at 5 right now. In fact, unless you see like a massive line swing because of a Jalen Hurts injury report, I think I'm going to be on the Commander side here.
Me too.
I don't want to overrate the most recency bias, but and the Commanders have played 2 weather neutral game, Tampa and then indoors, that they haven't had to deal with weather yet in these playoffs. But they know the Eagles. They're not afraid of them for better or worse. I think it's going to be a close one there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. They've played them twice already. They've beaten them once, even with a backup quarterback. And again, it's all house money. There's no expectations for Washington. And, for the Eagles, like you have to win this game at home. You absolutely have to. And we'll see if that gets to them at all. Last thing I'll mention for that matchup is that the Commanders did lose their best offensive lineman, one of their starting guards.
Yeah.
Who, it looked like a serious injury. He's probably going to miss even the start of next year. So we will see if that, impacts their running game at all. They were able to run it fairly effectively on Detroit. Would not necessarily expect that to be the case this weekend.
No, I definitely wouldn't. Not against Jalen Carter and company there. That's running right into the teeth of the Eagles' strength, the defense, and we saw that in that Thursday night game. The first time these two teams played each other, that the Commanders couldn't run the ball at all. That they were able to run the ball so effectively against the Lions opened everything else up in that game too.
Yep.
And I was surprised because Brian Robinson looked terrible going into that game, and he actually looked pretty good on Saturday night. So that was pretty big on that one there too.
His rushing prop for this week, I think, was like 36.5 now at DraftKings.
Wow. Okay. So it's still darn low. Yeah, it is. Any other things we want to talk about before we get on out of here?
No, I think we covered it pretty well, man. But it's brutal. We only have 4 games this next week. Weekend.
Yeah, we got prospective coaches can interview live in person now this week. So we'll see a lot of movement on that. The 2 Detroit coaches, coordinators there are probably going to be in play. We'll probably have lots of news to react to that over the week as well. Thank everybody for tuning in today. Catch us tonight on SiriusXM Fantasy. Looking forward to that as well. And of course, our other podcasts over the course of the week. And Jim Coventry already had his incident reactions, which you can check out here on, whether you're streaming on YouTube or if you're wherever you get your podcast, check that out as well. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.